morning.
Hello and welcome, everyone.
We are talking today about why some of us keep being attracted to abuse.
It's a common phenomenon.
It is. And there's a lot of misconceptions around this. From you asked for it to you shouldn't have dressed a certain way to perhaps there's like this desire in you that you really do want it and that's why you're attracting it. We've heard so many things. And so today we want to dispel some mystery and educate people about why they might still be attracting abusive situations into their life.
Yeah, let's let go of all the bullshit and the self-blame and the victim shaming and blaming that goes on, because it's bullshit.
It is bullshit. All right. So one of the first things we want to talk about is the science behind how trauma gets stored in the brain. And the reason why we talk about this every week is because it really is our foundation for understanding how to engage trauma, how to partner with our body mind in a way that effectively releases it and sets us free to be our pure selves, which is love and light. So first of all, what happens when we go through a scary situation, something that our brain tells us is not safe, whether it's real or perceived, if the brain perceives it as a danger, there are a number of things that happen. First of all, the mammalian brain kicks in. When we are in a situation that's dangerous, our body automatically has an alarm system that works. And when that alarm system kicks in, there's a number of chemicals that get released in our body to help us deal with the situation. Norepinephrine, adrenaline, cortisol, things like that. All that gets released into our body to prepare us to fight, flight, or freeze, or in some cases, fawning, which is tending to the person who is abusing their power. And a number of things happen internally when these chemicals get released. If you're in a flight response, you actually pull energy from various parts of your body to increase your lung capacity, your adrenaline, so that you can actually fight or run away. And then there's also the freeze action. And what happens when people go into freeze mode is energy is pulled from other sources in the body. A slightly different reaction happens though, where the breathing actually slows down. It can even stop. And a lot of energy is pulled from places like the neocortex. And the neocortex is where our higher thinking and reasoning skills lie. So when we're in this state, we are literally not able to think as clearly because the energy has been pulled from that part of the brain. So the brain doesn't have to analyze every piece of information coming in. It's literally the animal kicking in and saying, we've got to survive. We need to do whatever it takes to survive. So in the
I want to jump in here.
Sure, go ahead.
So this is one way, the way you've described this here, this is one way that we can differentiate a trigger from from an actual process of understanding what's going on. Is like when something happens and you you instantly apply a meaning to that and you have a physical response. And so often our triggers, it's an irrational response to what's actually happening. So what happened isn't nearly as big as what our body gives the meaning to it to be, which is based on a past trauma. So this again comes up. It's this differentiation where Kelly was describing what goes on in the body and the brain. This happens in a way that is, it's out of alignment with what actually happened, but the body gives a meaning to that instantly, like this. It's not something that you have thought about and brought a rational thought to, and then you get angry. That's a different thing. So thank you, Kelly. So.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, so this part of our brain helps us with traumas and also triggers. It's where the traumas get stored. So that way, when something similar comes into life that triggers that memory, it gets activated. So in the wild, when an animal is in a dangerous situation and it finally escapes from its predator, so say like an antelope is running away from a lion, when that antelope gets to safety, what it does is it begins to shake itself, like literally moving that energy out of it until it comes back to homeostasis. And unfortunately, for a lot of humans, we haven't learned this. We haven't learned how to move these emotions. And as well, for children, especially who have been victimized and are unable to remove themselves from a dangerous situation, they literally do not have the tools to bring themselves back to homeostasis. So in that case, what happens is these memories get stored in a few places. First of all, it gets stored in the mammalian brain. And in this part of our brain, there's no time, there's no reason. Things feel like the present moment all the time. Their pieces of information are stored here based on sensory information, so all of your five senses, along as well as emotional information. And the reason why is because when something comes into your periphery that is similar to this initial pain, this initial trauma or danger that your body perceived, your brain doesn't want to think about it. It just wants to be able to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode, because your body's number one goal is to keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
This is your body's goal in this. It is, your body is not your enemy. Your body is essentially keeping you alive. It is your savior. And then the other thing is that these memories actually get stored on a cellular level. They get stored in the body, and it can affect you on a number of levels. It can affect the way your body is formed, postures you hold, patterns you develop, whether the patterns are thinking patterns, emotional patterns, actual physical patterns that you do in your life. It affects everything.
And this is true whether you actually remember it consciously or not. The body remembers it even if you've repressed it in the brain.
Yes, and that's a beautiful thing about the body. And this is why Freya and I got so passionate about doing psychosomatic therapy.
Yes.
Is because the body is basically this live representation of what the soul feels living your human experience. And so when each person takes the time to sit with their body and listen to the messages based on how their bodies form, postures they hold, etc., then they can start engaging their body in ways that are effective in bringing healing. So why are we talking about all of this? People need to understand that when this pain is stored in the mammalian part of the brain, there is a subconscious action going on where your brain is going to be looking for similar situations to try to resolve this trauma. It's not to punish you. It's not to put you in the same situation. Your brain says, oh my God, this is still the present moment. We haven't solved it. How am I able to solve this? And it starts looking for ways to solve it. And so what we do, Freya, Mika, and I do, is we go into your body and we ask your body directly, what are you holding on to? What's the story here? What are the painful stories taking up residence? And then we begin to engage those stories and work with the body mind for some resolution, which we'll get into later. We wanted to get into the science of it first. Mm-hmm. And then Freya wants to share, if there's anything else you want to add to that, Freya, before you move into your piece.
Well, just that, like, this is all so important to understand and be aware of, because so often people blame themselves for this, and they don't understand that there's so many more layers to it than what we've been taught, and they fall into shame, again, more shame, that keeps them locked into the pattern of self-blaming for bringing themselves back into these situations. So important to understand that there's not just the conscious level of what we believe we deserve, but there's also the subconscious level that's running the program, and then the body level of the body wanting to create resolution around it, like you said. So
Exactly.
yes,
And
and the intuition part, the intuition gets dulled because of these traumas, and we learn not to trust our bodies through these traumas, through what people have told us, and through these repetitive patterns. We learn not to trust our bodies, and when we actually look back into it, the body was telling us all along. We just didn't listen because the body is because we've been taught on a subconscious level that, you know, we deserve this kind of treatment, we don't deserve all the good and happy things. And so because of that subconscious beliefs, we move away from what our body is actually telling us. We move away from that unease around someone and listen to the conscious mind that is the ego, that is trying to explain away all of these things, and quite literally what our body and our intuition are telling us are right on point. But we move away from that, we get dulled from that because we're trying to numb out the pain and the trauma, and so the intuition gets numbed out as well. Does that make sense, the way I explain that?
absolutely. And I want to give a little bit more detail from that so we can hopefully prevent people from heaping on more shame for ignoring their intuition. So this dulling of the intuition is very normal. So what happens, we have this beautiful nerve called the vagus nerve that comes down from our cerebellum and brainstem, and it touches all of our major organs, including stuff on our face and our lungs and even in our gut, our microbiome. And what it's doing is it's sending up information. 90% of the information that is communicated in the vagus nerve, between the vagus nerve and the brain, is from the body to the brain. So it's continually the body telling the brain what's going on. And what happens when we are in a triggered state and fight, flight, or freeze, and we have to put that intuition aside in order to survive, this is why the vagus nerve, the intuition, gets dulled. Because in a sense, we have to make a choice. Do I want to listen to my intuition, which I am unable to save myself from this situation currently, or do I ignore it and try to find a way to make this horrific situation livable? So again, this isn't something to be ashamed about, like, oh my gosh, I've been ignoring my intuition. It was likely ignored because you had to survive.
Yes, and when you're in that trauma state, that activated sympathetic nervous system state, that's when the vagus nerve gets like shut down, because all the energy is going to this other place. And when you're in a constant state of activation in your sympathetic nervous system, you're in that fight or flight or freeze mode, then you have those hormones flooding your body all of the time. You have the increased cortisol, all of this stuff. And so naturally, as a body function, the intuition is dulled. The vagus nerve is shut down.
And as well, you know, we touched on this earlier. We spoke about how when we're in that fight, flight, freeze mode, energy is pulled from other areas of the body. And we talk about this almost every week, and I want to touch on it again because it's specific. We're specifically addressing why we're attracted to abuse. Some of the areas that energy is pulled from our body when we're in these triggered states is, like I said, the neocortex. So the neocortex is where our higher thinking and reasoning skills are, where time exists. So when energy is pulled from that, we're not able to think as clearly. It's also pulled from our digestive tract. So you hear a lot of people having stomach issues when they live in chronic stressful situations or chronic abusive situations, whether it's IBS, diarrhea, constipation, throwing up, all of these things. These are psychosomatic reasons, everyone, for your body is communicating, this is way too much fucking information. This is way too much to process. I can't process it. So that's another place where the energy is taken from. And it's also taken from the immune system. So
Yes.
If your immune system is not online, you are susceptible to so many other diseases. And this is where things like immunodeficiency disorders kick in. Or even for myself, I had a lot of upper respiratory issues for many years because I had a lot of buried grief and rage from all the things that I went through. So this is another place where energy is pulled, and from our reproductive organs. So this can show up in any number of ways: irregular periods, infertility issues, maybe not even being able to get turned on, bladder, like chronic bladder infections.
Yes.
There's so many things that can happen.
Yeah, look at the old colloquialisms that we used to be a lot more aware of our body. We talk about being pissed off. You can get UTIs from stored rage in the body. You can get chronic urinary tract infections from sexual shame. Those are the two main things that show up with that. So there's so many ways that our body is speaking to us through the symptoms that we experience. So yes.
So why are we sharing all this wonderful information? Because we want you to understand how to work with your body mind to seek resolution. When you understand why all these different processes are kicking in and why certain chemicals and reactions are happening, then it gives you the opportunity to engage this in a different way. So one of the things we like to talk about is understanding the roots of pain. Do you want to lean into that, Freya?
Yes. So when we're feeling pain in the body, it's really, really important to really stop and get still and start listening to the body, going inside the body, and becoming aware of what's underneath that pain. And this is part of the process that we're leading people through. So it's so important, really, really pay attention and go into and listen to the messages your body's giving you. Pain is a message from the body. It's literally the body saying something's wrong, pay attention to me. And it's going to get louder and louder and louder until we actually listen. So it's the body is always communicating with us. So it's so incredibly important to really tap in and to listen to that. And then when we get aware of like what the different areas of the body represent, what emotions those represent, and possible experiences, then it's possible through listening to the body to then go to the root emotional core of that and heal it. And the body is always on our side, even though sometimes people just come to a place where they feel like their body is betraying them. It's actually speaking to them. It's trying to resolve what's going on.
There is something that's coming to my mind right now, and I would love to give people like a concrete example of this. So pain isn't always something like necessarily physical. It can be an emotional pain is too, which is also coming from the body, the emotional body. And one of the patterns that showed up in my life was defensiveness. And I remember it became really highlighted to me in some dance classes that I was taking. I was part of a salsa team for a while. And when I would receive correction, I would find myself defending why I did what I did, or if the teacher gave like a general direction to the whole class, I would take it personal. And I remember he called me out one day and he's like, why are you always so defensive about everything? Everything isn't about you. And that impacted me. And as I sat with that, I realized that is a belief that I have believed for a long time. I've been on the defense for a long time because of how I was raised, being belittled and berated by my adopted father for many years. And so what that was for me was a clue of what really needed to be healed and whole inside of myself. It really had nothing to do with my dance teacher or this team. It had everything to do with something that happened in childhood that instilled a belief in me.
Okay, so that's again an example of where you heard something or experienced something and you immediately, your body assigned a meaning to it that actually wasn't true.
Yes.
And that's when you can tell that it's a trigger.
And that's why we say sit with your pain with understanding instead of judging it right away. Seek to understand that pain, because if it's a pattern that keeps showing up, if defensiveness keeps showing up, or rage or whatever, there's something under that that's causing it. And then the other thing we want to talk about is working with the body for resolution. So if you find yourself in a repeated pattern of being in an abusive relationship, whatever that may look like for you. For me, it looked like being with partners that were emotionally unavailable and degrading towards me. Ended up with a lot of partners like that. And after a while, I had to take some ownership and be like, what is going on that I keep getting these men in my life? And so part of what the work that we do is go directly into the body to hear what the body is saying, what the stories of pain that the body is holding on to. And when we do this process, it's really important to approach yourself without comparing yourself to anyone else's experience or pain. And why do we say that? Because when you compare yourself to somebody else, for example, I could say, yeah, I understand I was raped as a child by my biological father under the age of 2, but at least I wasn't kidnapped and sold into child sexual slavery. The reason why it is so damaging to compare is because it is invalidating the pain that your soul feels living your human experience. Your soul doesn't care about the next person. I mean, it does care about the next person's human experience, and it doesn't invalidate your human experience. So putting the comparison aside and really listening to the pain that's there.
Yes, and this is one of the greatest causes of pain in the world. The greatest perpetuators is the comparison of pain and the invalidation of another's pain or your own pain by comparing it with what someone else has experienced. And it prevents the healing that is absolutely possible and deserved.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I recently decided I'm going to be doing with my clients is imagine yourself as a young child. And because the reality is this young child is likely still living inside of you. If you've gone through lots of horrific abuse, especially from childhood, this young child is still very much alive inside of you and likely neglected. And so taking the time to have a meditation to visualize what this young child looks like, what they feel like, what their current situation is like, and then engage yourself in that same manner. I find a lot of people, and I was like this with myself too, very militant towards myself in this healing process, and forgetting that a lot of my growth was stunted in childhood because of the trauma that I went through. So for a while, I engaged my healing process very much like a child would. And so there has to be some compassion, understanding in that sense, and patience too, realizing it's not going to be overnight. It took decades likely to create the mess, and it's going to take some time and love to change that.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
Anything you want to add to that, Freya?
It's this self-compassion that you're describing is absolutely essential, along with what you brought up before about not comparing with others. And once we come into compassion for ourselves and go through that healing process, that's when real compassion is actually possible for others, and the ripple of healing that is created goes far beyond ourselves at this point. But it has to start with ourselves. It absolutely must start within ourselves. And this connecting with the root pain underneath and holding that compassion within us is absolutely essential to this process. And it becomes again a self-perpetuating cycle in a good way, because the more we come into this state of compassion and reverence for ourselves and what we have experienced and been through, the deeper that self-reverence can go, and the more we begin to make those decisions that are in our best and highest good and really come to that centered place. And the more we make those decisions that are in our best and highest good, which will naturally then be in the best and highest good of everyone around us, then that self-reverence grows again. We make better decisions for ourselves, and that's how we escape the cycle of continually choosing into abusive situations, because they will show up for us again, just to see if that resolution has been created or not. And we'll have that opportunity to say, no, this is not treating me with honor and respect. And coming to that place where we become very, very much at peace with the process of saying, no, this is not okay. I do not agree to this anymore in my life, and moving on. And when we keep an open heart and still have that ability to connect deeply with others, and when we have an open heart, that automatically puts us at risk for, having a painful situation, like connecting with someone on a deep level and then having to sever that connection if they're not treating us with honor and respect. But if we're not having an open heart, we also can't experience the deep love and joy that is possible for us. And so when we come into that place of self-reverence, it allows us to have that deep connection and open heart, but still keep ourselves safe and honored and respected. So this is so, so important.
Yeah, I feel like finding good community is important too.
Yes.
Especially to have new anchor points in reality of what love and healthy relating can look like. I wanted to give a visual of what it could look like to understand this inner child that's still inside of us. And when I started this healing journey years ago, it was through a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And there was a chapter on there on inner family systems. And how the author explained it was, we all have these parts of us that show up at different times. And so, for example, if a situation happens and I get really angry and I blow a gasket, I could be like, oh man, I fucking hate that I'm so angry. And the reality of the situation is I am not so angry all the time. There was a part of me that was angry in a moment because of a situation, and that part formed in an effort to protect me. So instead of demonizing these parts of me that show up, sitting with them with understanding. And I remember when I first came across this concept, I was still under the belief that I was broken and evil. And so I thought, well, this makes no sense. I don't understand this. And so I closed my eyes to meditate, and immediately this whole vision happened inside of my head where I saw younger me and modern day me side by side, and younger me had this white dress on, like kind of like an old-fashioned Little House on the Prairie dress. And I had long hair, my bangs were in my face, and my head was down like this. And I was softly crying. And when modern day me first saw that, I was like, why the fuck is she crying? Yeah, very insensitive. And as soon as I thought that, my next thought was, oh my gosh, she's a young girl. She never had the chance to protect herself or even speak up for herself. And in that moment, this compassion came over me, and I walked over to her and I held her and I said, I understand you. I understand that you couldn't speak up for yourself and you couldn't defend yourself. And I want to make you aware I am here now and I'm going to be making better decisions for us. And I'm going to be calling up different parts of myself to make
Mhm.
better decisions for us. And this is the kind of internal relationship we want to invite you to foster for yourself. And this oftentimes takes the guidance of somebody else who's actually been able to navigate that whole mess. And there's no shame in it. It's just the reality of it.
Yes, yes, because when someone has already been through the journey and maybe had other mentors and has actually created a map that works, there's you can actually do the healing and create the progress in a few months that might have taken 40 years. And there are scientific studies that actually show that when left on our own resources, a process can take 20, 30, 40 years that you can really complete in a few months with a mentor who understands the process. So that's why that's important. And I loved your visual, Kelly. This is another process that I often take people through is like you imagine yourself sitting at a campfire in the dark and invite in all the different aspects of yourself that need to be heard. And that might be the little child, the inner child, that might be the part of you that's very angry about something, or it might be the ego that really the ego represents that part of us that wants to protect us and keep us safe. It's that mammalian brain part. And honoring and allowing each of them to say what they feel and need to be heard, and accepting and holding them in, reintegrating those parts of ourself with unconditional love and compassion. And that is part of reintegrating all the pieces of us and coming to this place of self-reverence for all of us, all of those pieces and aspects, and creating a beautiful whole, remembering.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for bringing that up, because it reminded me of that process, which is so important in the remembering of who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the remembering and the honoring of all that we are. Freya, I would love for you to share about your online programs, because you have lots of great content out there.
Yeah, we have some really, really powerful online programs that do include like working with all aspects and levels of the body, and helping guiding people and empowering them through the process of releasing the stored emotions and trauma, and really stepping into that place of self-reverence and holding and healing on all the levels. And so we've developed this because we know that not everybody can travel a long way and do hands-on sessions. And we wanted to be able to reach more people and really have processes that work on a body level, that work on all the levels: physical, emotional, mental, and energetic simultaneously. So we have developed this process that's really a journey through all of the modules and aspects of life, and integrating and connecting with all of who we are on a much, much deeper level.
Beautiful. Yeah, and we both host the trauma healing retreats, which
Yes.
they're in limbo right now with a lot of the borders being closed. And I know that wherever we are, we're still offering sessions. So I'm in Colorado. You're currently in Canada. We also both offer mentoring calls. So this can include so many different things. So
Yes.
if you're wanting to, go ahead.
Kelly, just one second. And both Kelly and us, when we're doing mentoring calls, we are going to be guiding people through these processes, and addressing all the levels of the body. It's not your typical mentoring call.
Yes. And we also, Freya and I also do psychosomatic therapy. So this is a great way to get in tune with what your own body is saying, understand your own body's language, and decide for yourself how you want to bring your life and your body mind back into alignment. And I've been working to be able to offer these services online too, including a full body mind analysis, which comes with follow-up coaching calls as well. And I know, Freya, you actually have your face reading, a lot of it automated online as well. So
we do have a free quiz that people can go to and get as
well. So
we do have a free quiz that people can go to and get.
Yeah, so you can reach out to Freya for that, or either one of us for the full body mind analysis. And if we are not a good fit for you, we are going to refer you to other people that would be a good fit for you. Because at the end of the day, what this is about is each person finding the right tools to hold themselves. And we have found some tools that work really well for us, and we believe in them, and we have seen them work well for other clients. And we understand what we offer is not for everyone. So reach out either way. This journey doesn't have to be alone.
Yes. It doesn't have to be alone. You are not alone. And we have lots of other resources, like Kelly said, aside from our own services.
Mm-hmm. And a huge network of people who love to empower people on their healing journey. So
we've had a couple of comments on the Facebook feed. Brenda is talking about having had scarring in her kidneys from severe infections because of the chronic
wow
coming up, and how what we're describing really resonates with her as far as what the body is speaking. So yes, know that healing is possible, and that underlying emotional basis still can be healed and create some amazing healing even on a physical level as well. It's really, really important to address those underlying emotional basis for what's going on.
Yes, and that's something that Freya and I are able to do as well. We are able to chat with you as part of a psychosomatic analysis about the different diseases and sicknesses that you've experienced or injuries you've sustained. And a lot of these have psychosomatic reasons behind them as well. So it can be a wonderful roadmap of discovery of your inner child and all the inner workings and stories that are going on.
Yeah, and this is where, when we do a psychosomatic analysis like this, as Kelly was mentioning, really diving into the history and finding out what's going on with the body. And that's where we might make recommendations that might be outside of what we offer, because there's so many different healing processes and possibilities. And it's going to depend on what comes up in that psychosomatic analysis and history. That's going to determine what we would actually recommend for you as well.
Absolutely. And both of us, I mean, I'm aware that I'm still exploring other healing modalities. You're exploring other healing modalities as well. Like we realize there's a lot out there. There's a lot.
Yeah. And that's all part of our art, is like bringing those pieces of the different modalities that we experience and learn, and then become expert in, and bringing it all together into a beautiful form of art that is our healing process.
Alchemizing it.
Yes.
All right. So is there anything else you want to add, Freya? I don't see any more questions.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions either. So no, I feel like that we're complete, unless somebody is asking any questions on here. And no, there are no more.
Great. Well, if you want to reach out to either one of us, I'm Kelly Love with Kelly Love Rewilding, and my website is kellyloverewilding.com. Freya?
Yeah, and we are Anona Sanctuary, Mika and I, and you can reach out to me directly.
And my email as well, if you want to email me directly is kelly@kellyloverewilding.com. So thank you, everyone. We have one more week in this series, and
Yes.
we may or may not make another one. We have one more week in this series, so tune in next week.
Yes. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for joining us, anyone who's listening.
Yeah, thank you, Fran, Mika.